The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
this is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
It might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the Sports Guy, and he writes a comical sports column. You must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. A sunny, polleny day here in Southern California. Not good for your friend Bill Simmons. I do not like pollen. But I do like our guest who's on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. He's the author of The Extra 2%, a book about the Tampa Bay Rays and how they rose to prominence over the last 7-8 years with some ingenuity in the front office. He also writes for Fangraphs and ESPN.com and Bloomberg and a whole bunch of places. And here he is. Jonah Keri, what's happening?
I'm good, Bill. How are you?
Well, it's a Montreal Bruins spring battle, as usual. And my Bruins DNA did not expect to win 2 straight playoff overtime games.
I went to game 1 at the Garden, sprung for really good seats, and it was euphoric. I tried to keep it on the down low and not go too crazy and get obnoxious, but I just couldn't help myself. And then they win game 2, and I'm just thinking, well, I mean, I am being a little bit overconfident, but it's hockey. You know, this stuff happens. I mean, look what happened to the Bruins last year, and you just have weird things happen. Momentum shifts seem to happen more often in hockey than in other sports. I don't know.
Well, the weirdest thing about hockey, and, you know, the hockey fans get mad because I don't watch the regular season. And the regular season has no correlation to the playoffs. You know, it's like, it really doesn't matter. A 1 seed can beat an 8 seed. I guess this year in the NBA, bad example because the Grizzlies are about to beat the Spurs. But it doesn't seem like home ice really matters that much. No. I watched last night the Kings lost Game 6 in overtime to the Sharks. They had a 5-minute power play that went from the tail end of the third period through overtime, and they still lost. And, you know, you just never know, which I guess is what makes it so great. But also, hey, why should I watch the regular season then?
Well, and I hate to say it, but I'm kind of with you. And this is coming from a Montreal native who grew up with the Habs and all this. But, you know, you get busy, you have life, you have kids, and you just have to give up something. And it's been hockey regular season. And I don't really take that as a slap on the regular season so much as how good the playoffs is. I had a little, you know, partially tongue-in-cheek comment on Twitter where I said, if all sports were like hockey playoffs, or if hockey playoffs was all that the NHL was, then there'd be no need for other sports. It just is the best. It's better than March Madness. It's better than the Super Bowl. It's better than the World Series. And I'm loving the NBA playoffs, but it's better than the NBA playoffs. It's heart-stopping.
All right, settle down.
I'm telling you, if you root for any team, it's just crazy. I can't take how good it is.
I actually watched more Bruins regular season this year than I did. I probably watched like 10 or 11 games. I tried to watch the Bruins-Canadiens when they played and stuff like that. But you're right. It's when you get older, you got to start sacrificing stuff. And for me, like the older I got, I think college football was the first one to go. And then, you know, regular season hockey to some degree, and then college basketball to some degree. But you got to start picking your spots a little bit more.
Okay, here's what I have to ask you. So the fellow stat had Tom Tango, big baseball guy, and he's also grew up in Montreal, a big Habs fan. So he was commenting, and I feel the exact same way. He said the games are so good. Listen, you're bummed your team lost, but you kind of get over it. I mean, Tim Thomas stood on his head. The Bruins played great. I love Ferentz flipping off the fans in Montreal. I think that's a cool rivalry thing. Yeah. I cannot get mad at this team. Is it just that I'm weird? Is it that because the team that I rooted for the most in life, which was the Expos, no longer exists, that I can be this kind of quasi-agnostic fan? I mean, would you ever, you know, if the Pats or the Celtics or the Red Sox lost, would you say, all right, it was exciting, no big deal, I'll get over it? I mean, that doesn't seem normal for a sports fan, for me anyway, from my perspective.
I decided, I came to the conclusion during this series that I think I hate the Canadiens more than any other team, including the Yankees.
I love it.
I see the uniforms, I see the BOS versus the MTL, I hear the Habs fans, and it just brings up so many bad memories from my childhood. That, you know, I'm like, for instance, I was watching Game 5 of the second overtime game.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there, and the game's going on, and I start thinking about when my dad told me that my parents were getting divorced. Like, for some reason, these are the memories that comes up when I have Bruins-Canadiens. Just all these traumatic things that happened to me over the years. And, you know, the Canadiens are one of those teams that even with a 3-2 lead in a series, I need to see their head get chopped off. I need the game to end, and I need to see the handshake line before I feel safe.
Yeah, and it's weird because they're not actually that good. I mean, Subban is just a superior player. I love him, but, they don't have many stars. But, yeah, it does seem to be that way. I wonder if my feeling toward the Habs and not being that bitter about the Bruins and your feeling about the Bruins and the Habs, maybe that's a Yankees-Red Sox thing pre-2004. Maybe the Habs have beaten up on the Bruins so long that I just could never, the Bruins, they're a cute little team. We'll take care of them, no problem. Maybe if the Bruins start thumping the Habs, and they did a couple years ago, by the way, and they keep doing it, maybe I'll start to really hate the Bruins, but I just don't feel that way right now.
The Bruins have gotten the upper hand a couple times, but I think for me, the Yankees, the 2004 and just coming back and that whole thing really got rid of a lot of demons for me. I still hate them. I still want them to do terribly. Yeah. But they don't bring the same visceral reaction that these Canadians. I watch these Bruins-Canadiens game, and I always assume that the worst possible thing is going to happen to the Bruins. I just will never be able to shake that.
Yeah, but go back and read your columns before 2004. Every Red Sox column reads like that. I'm not.
Oh yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, it just is, and I don't. And there's a nationalism thing too, right? I mean, they boo the American anthem in Montreal. I'm not. I don't. Those are not my people. They don't speak on behalf of me. I think that's pretty miserable.
Right.
And I'm actually happy. I went to the Garden. Nobody's booing the Canadian national anthem. Nobody's booing "O Canada" at the Garden. So I don't know what's up with that. Maybe it's an inferiority complex, one nation to another.
I guess the difference with the Red Sox Yankees is that post 2004, I don't watch the Red Sox Yankee games assuming that the worst possible thing's going to happen to the Red Sox. Like I at least have confidence when I watch those games. And also the players change and it just feels different. I don't feel like there's a correlation between 1978 and 2011 when I'm watching the games. When I watch Bruins-Canadiens, it's like going in some sort of a time machine. Montreal always has the three fastest guys on the ice. Doesn't matter what year it is. They just law of averages. Every year they have the three fastest guys. The uniforms look pretty much the same. Yeah. Just everything feels the same. It's like you could put in any game and you wouldn't even know what year it was.
What has to change for that to change then? Is it that the Bruins just need to step on their head over and over 5-10 years in a row, or will it always?
I guess they'd have to win like 5 straight. Well, we need to win the Stanley Cup.
Well, that's
and now it's like, and for me, it's like my dad is a much bigger Bruins fan than I am at this point because I kind of abandoned the team because of the owner and the 92 to 94 range. My dad was still a sap and still cared and watched, and he really wants it. This is like the last Boston thing for him, the Cup. He's gotten all the other titles. This is like the last one.
When was the last time you went to a Bruins playoff game?
It's been a while.
Oh, it's so fun. I mean, I had such a good time. It was really, really, and again, I'm a visiting fan, and it was so fun. I mean, I would argue that if you're in whatever, San Jose, you should go to a Sharks game, but there's something about Boston, Montreal. I mean, this series, one way or another is going to end pretty soon, but next round, if the Bruins make it through, I'd come back home and try to catch a game. It's fantastic. And,
the thing that always strikes me every year when going through these overtime games is how unenjoyable they are. It's really just excruciating.
I turned the volume off. That was how bad it was. I could not watch with the volume.
It's just painful, and it's like you kind of just want it to end. You don't want to go through it anymore. You reach this point where you're like, I don't care who scores. I can't take it anymore. I don't want to have a heart attack.
Yeah, I can't think of, I don't know, extra innings in baseball. It doesn't feel like that with any other sport because hockey, there's this finality to it that, I mean, you score a goal and it's over. I guess if you score a run, it could be over, but that has to be the bottom of an inning. But there's just, and hockey goes in off a skate, and it's just like, really, that's how the game ended. Horton, they basically surrounded the goalie. He tapped the puck in from point-blank range. That would be bad, but it would also be bad if they put in a slap shot from 120 feet. It's all bad. There is no good hockey ending if your team loses.
And in baseball, the only thing that can really compare is if it's the bottom of an inning and you're rooting for the visiting team. Yeah. And any pitch can end the game. And I guess
you got a shaky closer, especially.
Yeah.
Like or you're facing David Ortiz and he's 9 for his last 10 with 8 homers, something like that.
Right. And then in football, I guess you could say it's a tie game and the other team's driving the last 3 minutes. I guess it's that same kind of emotion.
Yeah, but hockey is it's 8-10 plays to get down the field. In hockey, scramble, scored, it's over.
And it's so random.
Yeah.
And the one thing that was making me feel good during the Game 5 with the Bruins was that, I don't know, I have this rule with hockey that whoever is dominating the overtime always seems to lose. And the Canadians had all these great chances.
They
and
were
Thomas,
much better, in overtime.
Oh, yeah, they're so much better. And Thomas had to, stand on his head for that one save, and the Bruins caught another break. And it started piling up, and I'm thinking, this is good. Usually that's what happens to us, and then they score. And it was the old reversal.
I feel that way too. I used to be in these hockey playoff pools with my friends. This is when you're Canadian, you're in a hockey playoff pool, and everybody take Yager and Lemieux or Gretzky or whatever in the first few rounds. And it was always the guys who took, Chris Kontos in the last round or whatever. These scrubs would score because, like you said, it is so unpredictable. And it's the losing team, and it's the mucker third, fourth line that puts in the goal. And you're just, really, that's how it ended. It's great. By the way, Thomas, I know we just said it, and I've said it. I mean, he was amazing. I'm in awe of that guy. It was the save on Giunta was beyond belief. I mean, it was a 2-on-1. I'm like, they're going to score. It was a perfect pass. It was a perfect shot, and he just made the save. There's nothing you can do when someone makes a save like that. And that's the thing about the playoffs. You look at the Flyers. They're so much better than the Sabres, but they got goalie problems, and they might go down. And the Canucks are the best team in the NHL, and they got goalie problems. They might blow a 3-0 lead here. And by the way, both Canadian teams could be out of the playoffs tonight. Talk about a nightmare for a Canadian playoff for a hockey fan.
Let's talk about this Canucks thing because
horrible.
You knew the Canucks. Who would you think their American sports comparison is? For the fan base, just feeling like everything's
I guess it's
wrong.
like a Buffalo Bills thing in the 90s because they were really, really good in the regular season those years. Yeah.
When they drew the Blackhawks, like the three hockey people that I know were all like, "Oh God, if that series keeps going and goes into like the 5, 6, 7 game range, that fan base is going to have a heart attack."
It's terrible.
And this is like the all-time worst-case scenario. At least this game's home, but man, to blow that one. That would be an all-time catastrophe, I think, for a playoff series.
Yeah, I'll drop a plug. My friend Bruce Arthur writes for the National Post. He's a really, really one of the best Canadian sports writers, and he wrote about this, the psychic trauma of it all, and it's terrible. I mean, it's just, and the Luongo drama is almost like an extra layer. Here you've got this guy, he's the anointed one, comes up in the rich Montreal goalie legacy, which is Patrick Waugh and Brodeur and all these guys, and he's supposed to be the next guy, and he's out of the playoffs. He's not playing. He's got a supposed bad back. Yeah, he doesn't have a bad back, dude. He's got a case of the I'm Luongo and I'm failing. And it is bad. And it's funny about the Blackhawks, that your friends would say, oh, this is going to be a bad situation. Blackhawks suck. They have a bad team this year. They just don't have much talent. But that does not seem to matter in hockey. There's no reason. If this were any other sport, if it was whatever, it'd be the equivalent of like the Lakers playing, I don't know, the Warriors. They'd win 4 straight. It would be no problem. There's just something about hockey, and you get in these situations, and they're all feeling it. And, I'm reluctant to transfer the feelings of a fan base onto players. I think that can be a little bit overwrought. But I think if it's ever going to apply, it might be in this case.
I believe in it because I saw it affect the Red Sox firsthand. I was in Fenway for games when the fans, you could feel that energy. I asked somebody about this. I asked Millar a couple weeks ago about this, and he was saying, yeah, we could feel it. We could feel like if everybody in the building has confidence, I don't know if you can feel that, but if everybody in the building is terrified, you can't. How do you not feel that?
Yeah, maybe it depends on the player, too. There's certain pitchers, especially, you're just looking at the glove, and that's all you're... Someone like Rivera, he's the best closer ever, but does he really care if Fenway Park is going crazy? He's Rivera. I don't know. Maybe he's just the exception, and most players do feel it, but I can't imagine that he's the only guy who's zoned in like that.
The Bruins blew a 3-0 lead last year, but the goalie had gotten hot for like a series and a half, and he cooled off, Tuukka Rask, and then Krejci got hurt, and that he just didn't have enough depth. And it was like once they lost Game 4, I think everybody who kind of followed that team, it was in play. Everybody was thinking about it. It wasn't inconceivable that they could blow this. I think this Canucks thing, given that they were the 1 seed, given the history of the team, and then Game 7 being at home.
Yeah.
Oof.
Well, I mean, the only thing I'd say about that is that the Flyers were really good last year. The Bruins were going up against a formidable opponent, so losing 4 straight to the Flyers in the regular season would be nothing. That would be almost expected. So,
it was definitely a choke, but it wasn't like, oh my God, that's the most colossally terrible thing that's ever happened. Like you watch those last 4 games, you're like, these guys are better. Like what are you gonna do? I don't feel like the Canucks are worse than the Blackhawks.
Yeah, I mean, you almost feel like there should be some residual good feelings from Canada winning the gold, and it was in Vancouver and something, but and there were a couple of Canucks who actually played very well throughout the whole tournament, even for different countries.
The thing with the Game 6 though is like Bruins-Canadiens, I still don't feel safe. The Canadians probably win tonight, and it probably comes down to a Game 7, and I'll probably have a heart attack. But the one thing I feel good about with this Bruins-Canadiens series is Carey Price just isn't that good. I think we can score on him. He's a little lazy with the puck around the net. He gets sloppy. I like sloppy goalies. I want to go against a sloppy goalie in a playoff series.
Yeah, he's got that. There's something about tall, except for Hasek, but there's something about these tall goalies, and they look kind of lopey, and they just don't quite look the same. He's just this bigger guy, and I don't know, maybe I'm making this phenomenon up, and maybe Hasek is the better example, but I get that feeling too. And he was good in the regular season, by the way. Wasn't as good as Thomas, a couple other guys, but he probably was one of the 5 best goalies in the league. And I do like the decision ultimately to get rid of Halak. That was the great story in Montreal, was they had this goalie, and he stood on his head, and the Habs made this miracle playoff run, and he was so good. This is how crazy people are in Montreal. In the Le Journal de Montréal, which is one of the French dailies, they had an editorial cartoon of Halak the goalie, and he was dressed like Jesus at the Last Supper.
Wow.
I don't care what's happening in Boston. There's no Boston Globe scenario by which Poppy or Thomas or whoever is going to be dressed like Jesus. It's just not happening. So, and they got rid of him, and to me that felt like the right move. Price was the younger guy. Halak, might have been a flash in the pan. I think the Price can develop over time, but in the here and now, Thomas is a better goalie than Price. I don't think there's any question.
The Winnipeg thing is definitely happening, right?
That would be nice. I don't know. I mean, Phoenix just keeps piling money and the government goes for it. I don't know what's going to come of all that. I still think that Hamilton could support a team that's basically not too far from Toronto. It'd basically be almost like like South Jersey compared to New York kind of thing if it was baseball. So, yeah, you would imagine that there could be a Canadian team coming, but I don't know. Bettman seems invested in the Sun Belt, and there's a certain amount of cognitive dissonance there. He doesn't want to admit that he was wrong and whatever. And
plus they got a big TV contract for them. It wasn't a big TV contract if you compare it to any other league, but I think they were excited about it. Yeah, well, it's a funny thing, too. Canadian teams, it's so funny when all those teams, and I throw the Expos in there, too, the economy's changed, man. The Canadian dollar is above the American dollar now. Yep. If you want to buy a typical suburban house in Montreal, 15 miles outside of downtown, it's like $600K. Things have completely changed. The economy's really caught up. Now, this could be another bubble, but just north of the border. But right now, there are a lot of reasons why sports could be successful in a whole bunch of Canadian cities that it wasn't the case 5-10 years ago. And you just mentioned the biggest reason why the NBA needs to get back in with Vancouver, because from the digging around and trying to figure out if a team could ever go back there and make it, I didn't realize that the Canadian dollar versus the American dollar is one of the biggest reasons that franchise failed there. I just assumed it was front office incompetence and they never got the right lottery pick, et cetera, but they were also kind of at a disadvantage, and now they wouldn't be at a disadvantage, which is why the NBA should go back there, I think. Yeah, well, and you're making Canadian revenue and you're paying in American dollars, and, people are making, a typical person is making your same $50K, except that if you want to make the tickets add up, and it's $100 normally for good seats somewhere else, you're going to have to pay $135. I mean, it becomes very difficult to sustain that kind of model. So sure, that has changed dramatically, and just the underlying economy has, and you've got some more up-and-coming Canadian companies that have emerged, and it's changed quite a bit. Maybe that's a lot of it is a statement on what's happened to the U.S. economy, too. Right. But it is kind of interesting that we have seen that shift. And, yeah, I think that it could work in Vancouver. But the only thing that gets into, and you covered this well in your column today, is where are players going to want to play? And the thing that stood out to me, I met Steve Francis just before the NBA draft that year. I went to his little draft party, him and Baron Davis, which is a whole other story. But it was an interesting conversation. He seemed like an interesting enough guy. And then he gets drafted, and he says, no way do I want to play in Vancouver. Not happening, not interested. And he ends up in Houston. And I'm just thinking, I've been to Vancouver. Right. I've been to Houston. What are you talking about, Steve Francis? What is wrong with you? But I guess this is the mentality, and, maybe I'm not the right background, skin color, or whatever to appreciate this, but it just is the case that Vancouver has not been traditionally a place where people want to play, and Toronto obviously has some of those same problems. I wonder if the fact that EA Sports is located outside of Vancouver and they have so many athletes shuttling in and out of there, and it is. I think Vancouver is an amazing city. Oh, yeah. I love Vancouver. I could live in Vancouver. Me too. And if athletes pass through there and they have in their head like, oh, Vancouver, where's that? But they actually see it, maybe they'd feel a little differently. You don't think Montreal could have an NBA team, right? No, and they've tried to get the Raptors over for exhibition, and they've made some efforts, but I just don't think if they can't support a baseball team. But there's a weird basketball underground now. I like Joel Anthony's from Montreal, which is a ringing endorsement, I know, but there are a few things happening there, but I don't necessarily see it. It's funny about Toronto, especially though. Your man Whitlock, is he the one who called it? What is it? Black Vegas, Toronto? That it just seems like it has that kind of reputation of being a place that players want to visit, but they'll stop short of living there, I guess, because of the taxes and the cold and all that. What about baseball coming back other than in Toronto? You see that? Or is it just it's going to be a one-team town forever?
I
just say country. One-team country, sorry.
Yeah, although it's not, the whole country is not that much bigger than, let's say, Greater Los Angeles. But well, the thing about Montreal is I just think that there's a certain, again, you talk about the dissonance. Bud Selig and the owners and everybody went so far to get baseball out of Montreal that it doesn't matter that the situation has improved and the economy has improved. I just think you burn a certain amount of bridges, it's not going to happen. It's different with, let's say Seattle, and I lived there for a little while too. I don't think it was quite that bad. It wasn't apocalyptic. It wasn't like a decade or 15 years of Seattle terrible. It was a lease issue. It was an arena issue. So I could see, a sport coming back to a city where it's just one thing, but not where there are endemic things. Even if they change, I just don't think people could wrap their minds around it. And I don't necessarily see it for Vancouver because you've got a team in Seattle and whatever, and then you're left with, smaller Canadian cities. So it's going to be Toronto. I think that's probably what's going to be the status quo.
The reason I wrote about the Kings was I was kind of surprised how uneducated I was about the whole thing, just from what it seemed like most people thought was going on versus what was actually going on. And the more and more people I talked to, it was just clearly the owners were running out of money and scrambling to try to figure out any way to keep their team and cover their debt, all that stuff. Do you feel like the Montreal thing, what we know about it with the Expos, that was covered accurately? Do you think that it was fair that the team left?
One of the biggest problems with Montreal is that nobody wanted to buy a team and keep it there. And that's what it came down to. And you mentioned in your column that there do seem to be interested parties who could potentially want to just buy a team and keep it in Sacramento. Not necessarily for 100 years, but at least to give it a shot. If you don't have anybody interested, then it's not going to work. Now, the question is, why isn't there anybody interested? And basically what Major League Baseball did is it took a restaurant, a pretty good restaurant, not the best restaurant, but every single day in its little Yelp reviews it would say, there's cockroaches and rats in your soup. And if you do that every single day, I don't care how good the steak is over there, you're just going to stop. You're going to say, I don't want cockroaches and rats. Yeah. And that's what they did with the Expos. And so it was kind of a chicken and the egg thing, is you've got a situation where nobody wanted to go there, but the well had been poisoned as well. And there were all these other factors, which is just, it was crazy. I mean, the 94 strike, when that goes down, that changed everything because the team was starting to draw and there was local interest and they had the best record in baseball. And then not only is the season washed away, but once things kind of reopen, then the order is given to Kevin Malone, the general manager, go sell everybody in a week. So everybody knows that John Wetland can be had for nothing and he becomes the beginning of the Yankees dynasty. He's the closer. And Grissom's gone and Walker's gone and all these guys leave. And it's just, it was the beginning of the end, and there were just all these factors that played into it. But I just think that the biggest difference is that we haven't necessarily gone down that road in Sacramento. It's not so poisoned. On the other hand, your point about how do you develop talent and how do you build a winning club, totally different in baseball. I just spent 2 years of my life writing about the Tampa Bay Rays who play in Tampa Bay and play against Boston and New York, and they could do it. I mean, they won 2 division titles in 3 years. I don't know if they're going to win 5 more. But it's possible. It's almost impossible in Sacramento and in places like that unless you completely luck into the lottery, as you talked about, or just something good happens to you. And baseball and basketball are just totally different that way. So, maybe Sacramento is closer to turning around than you think. Maybe it's a matter of, you stay the course with Reek and Cousins and you get a couple other players and they're the new Thunder within 3-4 years.
Yeah. In basketball, unlike baseball, you still need that to win that one big poker hand at the table with one of the lottery picks. And baseball,
LeBron is worth 25 or 30 wins. Whatever WAR or whatever stat you want to use, there's no scenario where a baseball player, even Bonds in his prime, is ever worth more than 10. Never.
Yeah. And in baseball, as weird as it sounds, I think you have more of an advantage if you lose for a few years. I mean, look at the Royals now. The Royals are kind of where the Rays were 5 years ago, where they've just been cherry picking the top guys in the draft year after year after year after year and trading whatever good players they had and now it's starting to add up and they're loaded.
The only thing I'll say about that is that you can have good picks, and the Rays in their 08 team, they really had 4 guys that were number 1 picks. The rest of them they did well in the second round and the 19th round, and they did other things.
Yeah.
And that's because they had good management, and I'm not so sure that the Royals have the quality of the management. In fact, I will just say that the Royals do not have as good quality of management as the Tampa Bay Rays do. They could still win. They play in a much weaker division, and that's everything, as we know in baseball, when you don't have to beat the Yankees and the Red Sox. that's wonderful. But, they're going to have to make those pieces fit and figure out, let's say they get their parts 1 through 10. You still need 11 through 25 to build a major league team. I haven't seen much evidence that the Royals know how to do that.
Your book came out, I think, like 6 weeks ago, The Extra 2%. It was about how the Rays kind of fought this small market thing and tried to stay competitive and come up with a couple advantages and market inefficiencies, things like that. In the NBA, I would argue that Sam Presti's done the best job with that. I feel like he's created something of a blueprint. You agree?
Yeah, and I mean, part of it goes to Durant over Odin and things like that.
Yeah.
But sure, I think that is the case. And you and I talked offline a little bit about this. What can NBA general managers do to make this happen? You're going to get that luck, and Presti start off with that luck. And he's been so good otherwise, and a lot of it just comes down to, quite frankly, don't sign any contracts that are going to cripple your cap. I mean, that's like point number one. Just if you're going to sign somebody, you better make absolutely freaking sure. There better be no doubt in your mind. I mean, yeah, even Russell Westbrook, you can start to poke holes in his game. He's a great player, but I don't know. Is he going to be the guy that you max out? I guess you're going to have to eventually, but
they decided with Jeff Green, that's not somebody we want to pay $50 million. Let's get rid of him.
And that might prove to be the right decision. And I actually, I'm not to the same extent that you are, but I am a Celtics fan too. My dad was a Celtics fan, so I grew up a Celtics fan. And I talked to a bunch of Thunder fans afterwards, and they said, "Oh yeah, you are not going to like Jeff Green." I said,
yeah.
Really? He seems pretty good. No, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, maybe he'll come around, but
I went on the Daily Thunder, which is a really good blog that covers Oklahoma City's team, and I was surprised by the Jeff Green. How ambivalent they were about his talents. It made me nervous. You know my whole theory about if you're going to make a trade, at least feel out the fan base, because it's never a good sign if the fan base is delighted that they just got rid of their guy to you.
Yeah.
And I think the Red Sox have learned that with this John Lackey contract. They signed Lackey, and everybody in Anaheim was sending me emails making fun of, oh, good luck with that one. And I was like, oh, no, this is going to be terrible. But, nobody knows like the fans. It sounds weird, but the fans are the ones that are just watching game after game after game, and all they judge these guys by is this guy good for my team or not? And if they're happy to see somebody go, it's not a good sign. Yeah,
and maybe the fans know more. Actually, maybe that's even more germane now than it used to be, because now the fans are educated that you've got, smartfootball.com and footballoutsiders.com and 82 games and baseball prospectus and Fangraphs, and everybody's breaking down everything, and you can do all that stuff, and you can recognize it as a fan. So they see it with their eyes. And, I mean, how much worse are the public numbers than the private numbers? I don't know, not much worse. So they do have a pretty good idea, and it does make me nervous. So, anyway, so they let go of Green, and they did what they needed to do, and I think that's all fine. And, it'll be interesting. I mean, do they have are they going to win the championship this year? Okay, maybe not. If they don't, what are they missing? And there's a certain amount of, in the NBA, it's funny how players operate, too. They start to think, okay, they look around the landscape, they say, all right, I'm 36 years old, where can I play my last few games? And the Celtics, when they won the first time, Posey and P.J. Brown and all these guys, they all go to the Celtics because they have all the pieces. Maybe the Thunder don't have all the pieces already, but if they've got 3 or 4 and you're looking around the league and you're, who the heck knows, Matt Bonner, I don't know, somebody who's going to contribute to your team but not be a star, you're going to say, all right, I like the way these guys play, and they're good. I'm going to go over there, and suddenly they have 3-4 Posies, and now they're really formidable. They're not just a 55-win team. They're a potential championship team.
The one thing that fans have, where you get in trouble with fans evaluating players, is too much emotion coming into it. And I think a great example is the Nomar trade in 2004, which was really polarizing at the time. And I was of the opinion that he was just a dark cloud, and he was so upset over the whole contract thing, and defensively he was really slipping. If you just watch game, now we have all good stats to kind of show it, but back then we didn't have great defensive stats in 2004 yet, did we? We had a few.
Yeah, it wasn't quite there.
But it was just kind of the way the team was built. We just kind of needed somebody who could feel the ball and was happy. But there's so much emotion with the Nomar era from 97 to 2004 that it clouded. And I think the Perkins trade, although it turns out wasn't a great trade, but that was another case where the fans were so invested with Perkins that it was hard to think rationally about it. So I think that's where you get into trouble. I look at like the Blazers. I think the Blazers have among the most passionate fans, and they always end up overrating like Rudy Fernandez and Jared Bayless. Like they've had guys, and each guy is like untouchable, and this guy's great, and and I think that's what the danger you get into.
Yeah, what do you call them? The Portland soccer moms? And you
the soccer moms.
And you say that in an endearing way, and I
Yeah.
love Portland sports fans too. They care a heck of a lot, and there's a lot to be said for that. And it's a funny thing about the Celtics too. I talked to a couple of front office people, and this was like around the Super Bowl, and we were talking about Glenn Davis versus Kendrick Perkins, and I can't get into too many details, and we frankly didn't give too many details, but the conversation was, wait a minute, this sort of come to realization, you can't keep both these guys. Someone's got to go. Do you just ride it out and let one of them walk with no compensation? Because it's not like baseball. You don't get draft picks. You just have to get rid of the guy unless you sign and trade him, and even that's not easy. Do you ride it out, or do you just say, okay, we got to trade one of them first? And they're sort of like, well, we don't know what's going to happen. And then a couple weeks later, a trade comes down the pike. So, yeah, I mean, this came down to Ainge thinking long term, and in a couple years you're going to have Rondo and, I don't know, Green, and, maybe Dwight Howard goes to the Celtics. Maybe he has this master plan. Yeah, I mean, and I thought that's going to happen for a while, by the way. The whole thing is he's going to go to the Lakers. Celtics can outbid anybody. All those guys are gone. Garnett, Pierce, Allen, I mean, their contracts are going to be out at the same time. It's not an accident. I just felt that was, it seemed to me that they were the favorites, but I don't know why the mainstream media doesn't talk about it. Maybe the Lakers will just have more talent, and Howard will want to play there, and it's L.A., but I could see Dwight Howard being a Celtic, sure.
The Lakers could only get him if they traded for him. I think
okay,
the
but
Celtics
the Celtics don't
could
need
actually
to do that. All those
sign
guys expire. And, okay, so, I mean, if you only have Rondo and Howard, I don't know, that's still pretty good. Can't you build 3 through 8 organically after that? I think you could.
Well, see, now you're just getting me excited.
Except that's the worst combination of superstar guys and jump shooting ability in the history of the NBA, probably.
I was going to say it's the worst combination of crunch time guys you'd ever want in your life. Rondo and Dwight Howard, both of whom don't want to get fouled with 4 minutes to go.
Yeah, but maybe you go out and you get, a whole bunch of threes and, just these shooters all over. You get these Ryan Anderson types up and down the roster, and they could make it work. Or Richard Jefferson or whoever. You get all these players like that. Maybe that could work.
Yeah, the Celtics only have Paul Pierce for $16.7 million and Rajon Rondo for $11 million and Avery Bradley for $1.6 million. Those are their 3 guys that are under contract for 2012-13.
The trade Picasso, who spent all your time on the trade machine, and you haven't thought about a Rondo Howard future. I've thought about this all the time.
I have thought about it, but I don't really like Howard. I don't like watching him that much.
Yeah, but who else?
I would talk myself into him. Believe me. But yeah, I mean, I think what he's done in this Atlanta series is a really good example. He's putting up his stats, but
well, that team sucks, though. I mean,
no, they really suck. But he's the best guy in that team. Like you watch Chris Paul in this Lakers series, and he's carrying these guys. And every time the ball stops or shooting free throws, he's just walking around getting guys fired up and. He just has complete control over that whole team. And Howard is almost like you're putting an alien on the court for 48 minutes. He has no interaction at all with his teammates.
Another Twitter debate, and we can get back to Howard in a second, but Chris Paul, where does he rank among NBA players? Isn't he better than Derrick Rose, if he's healthy?
Well, here's the thing. Chris Paul really, really cruised along during the regular season and picked his spots. And now we know why he did it. He was saving himself for the playoffs. But, Rose gets credit for busting his ass for 6 months in the regular season. I watch games where Paul drove to the rim 5 times in 48 minutes.
Yep.
And I think his knee brace came off in February.
Yep.
And he's shown flashes. I wrote about right before the playoffs. I watched him just destroy Houston one game. I was like, whoa, is that the old Chris Paul? What just happened there? And then we didn't know if it was just his knee was good on certain nights or whatever. Obviously, he was just waiting for the playoffs because now he's at a whole other level. And I still think he's the best pure point guard of all time. I don't know if he can do it every night, but he's Isaiah Thomas as a better shooter and slightly quicker.
I think we have to adjust a little bit for the competition, too. If there's one team that he could exploit, it's actually Lakers, who are like Blake's going to guard or Fisher, or, you may as well put me on the court. I'll have as good a chance. I mean, so there is that, but still, I mean, he's going against 2 guys, and he's always been known as a great passer, but, he's doing Rose things with the ball, too. He'll go to the hoop. He'll double clutch and score and get fouled.
And they have no scoring, really. It's
West
Carl Landry. Yeah.
It's a fun team. Boy, there's a lot of these fun underdog teams to root for. I'm all over the Grizzlies bandwagon and the Hornets bandwagon. I'm watching every single game, and I've got, again, kids and responsibilities, and I just don't care. I'm watching hockey playoff games and basketball. I got them stacked on top of each other. I'm tracking what the Rays are doing. My life is a shambles right now. I have no time to do anything. I'm just watching all these sports.
It's been the best combo round one NBA NHL combo ever. Because I don't ever remember this many NBA playoff series being interesting. Like even Knicks Celtics, which was a sweep.
Yeah.
All those games were interesting. Even Atlanta Orlando, which year after year is always the NBA TV series that they throw that, or some variation of that you just don't care about at all. That series has become interesting. Grizzlies 1 versus 8. That's the most compelling series of the playoffs. Like, I just said bleep that, Joe Mead. The Zombie Sonics versus the Nuggets, which was 3-0, but all three of those games were really entertaining. Like there's no dud in this round one. And then for the NHL, the Vancouver-Chicago thing and Philly-Buffalo, Bruins-Habs, it's been a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I wonder, I think this has been talked about too in different places, if it's just this weird inflection point where a lot of the NBA stars just got old at the same time. I mean, you watch Kobe and Paul in the same game.
Yeah.
Paul's a better player than Kobe at this point. I don't even think there's any statistically or with your eyes or whatever you want to say. And maybe we've just had that shift that, okay, the best teams in the NBA in the regular season, Spurs, they're old. Lakers, they're not entirely old, but they're pretty old. Celtics, certainly old, although they didn't get a one seed necessarily. And you've got this kind of gap where the other teams that are the upstarts, and I guess the Bulls are, they're a weird upstart because they're the number 1 seed, but there's this whole, are they ready? Do they have all the pieces? And the Thunder and all this. So it's as much in flux as I can remember the league being, maybe since before this generation of new stars came in, since before LeBron and Anthony, whatever. So you're going back 6-7 years to that.
You're going back further than that. I mean, this seems to happen like every 10 years or so.
Yeah.
Because the last time it happened was the Shaq, Kobe, Iverson with the Sixers, Ray Allen and Big Dog with the Bucks, Pierce with the Celtics. Like that whole generation, Duncan and the Spurs. That whole generation kind of moved in. But then I think even the better example is probably like around the 92-93 range.
Right.
When you had
no more Magic.
Yeah, Magic and Bird, Isaiah's Pistons, that whole Dominique's Hawks, all those people got shoved out, and then this new crop came in, and it was like the TMC Warriors, Jordan and Pippen and the Bulls, and Ewing and the Knicks, and it just felt like something was changed. And then Barkley went to Phoenix, same thing. Seattle had Peyton and Kemp. All of a sudden, there were like these new gangs.
Yeah.
And that's what it feels like this year. It feels like they're new gangs, and the old gangs are on their way out. Like the Spurs are on their way out. Get rid of them.
Well, and of course, what makes this great is that the last time you had all these new gangs, and that's all fine, and then the Bulls just stomped on their heads every single playoffs. I mean, they just dominated. You could have, I don't know, 6-7 different champions in the next 10 years. I mean, it's wide open, and I love it. And you might get the case where, it becomes a super team, and I don't know, Paul finds his way to New York, and that team becomes that team, or maybe it is the Zombie Sonics, and they become that way. I don't know, but right now, it's hard to pinpoint the next few years, and I don't want to look ahead too far because I'm loving what's going on right now, but it's hard to see one dynasty emerging the way the Bulls did. I kind of feel like it's going to be, changing hands almost every single season.
And it seems like with the Bulls, the Miami, and then Oklahoma City, you have three teams that just were not in the mix last year.
Right.
As a title contender. And now you could argue that those are three of the top 5 title contenders.
Clearly.
I certainly would.
Yeah, sure.
I think those three, the Celtics and the Lakers, are the only 5 teams that could win the title. But
probably, yeah, I guess.
When you think that those 3 teams kind of came out of thin air this year, big puff cloud.
Yeah, but I mean, it was coming, and it
was coming, but
the Thunder had made the playoffs and all that stuff, and
they weren't ready. The Perkins trade, if they don't make those trades, I think they're in the same position they were last year. They're too small, a year away. They got to make when are they going to make a big trade? And even though Perkins, it's not like he's been, Bill Russell in 1962.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, he made that whole team fall into place. All the pieces fell right where they should be now. Now the big X factor is Westbrook, and whether he's going to realize that you can't shoot 30 times in a playoff game if you're a point guard.
And the super-duper under-the-radar thing is maybe a few years from now we'll remember this as the year that Serge Ibaka started his meteoric rise.
Oh, definitely.
Between the slam dunk contest and Perkins freeing him up to play the 4 and You know, he's 21 years old. He hasn't tapped into his offense yet. I mean, forgive the obvious comparison because they're both foreign players, but I mean, Olajuwon, once he started really developing that offense, and he's not Olajuwon. Granted, Olajuwon's one of the best players of all time, but you go down this road, you start playing at a late age, and you've got all this natural talent. Who the heck knows what this guy's upside is? It could be immense. He could be hitting 20-footers a couple years from now. So I think that he could become a serious player on that team, a legitimate number 3 star on a championship club.
I've never seen somebody get this much better this quickly for a basketball team that's kind of in the mix. You see it with bad teams.
Yeah.
You don't see it like a guy who's actually playing for a team that has a chance to win the title, but as the year is going on, he's getting better. Like, and all of a sudden now he has like this 15-foot jumper that he makes all the time. Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
I mean, all of a sudden he's once they got Perkins, he's blocking everybody weak side and just flying around. Like
on the break, he's doing LeBron chase downs. This guy's 240 pounds or something. He's doing that. That's unbelievable. And
has an edge to him.
He does, and I think the other thing, it's a good point about bad teams. When you've got bad teams and you have a guy like that, then they become the Granger or the Rudy Gay, and they start jacking shots, and it can make their game worse, actually. If Danny Granger was a Laker all this time, he'd probably be a better basketball player because he'd have to defer, and he'd figure out to pick his spots, and he'd be more efficient and all that good stuff. And Ibaka has that. He's got Durant, he's got Westbrook, and he could develop at his own pace. He doesn't need to dominate the offense. And organically, it's going to go that way. And in a couple years, if he wants to be a free agent and become a number 2 guy on another team, maybe he'll be better equipped and have those skills that he wouldn't have had if he came up with a lousy 20-win club where he had to carry them.
Let's talk about baseball because we're running out of time.
Sure.
Top 3 things you've been most surprised by as we head out of the month of April.
Me and the small sample sizes, I'm always reluctant to say too much about that stuff. But the Indians are off to a nice start, which is great. And it strikes me that there are a few players, I just wrote about it for .com. You got Russell Martin with the Yankees, and with the Indians, you got 2 guys with Hafner and Sizemore, although it's a very small sample, who are hitting and doing well. And it's interesting, these bounce-back stories. And so I'm enjoying how that is playing out. And the thing about the AL Central especially, and maybe that's not the glamour team to talk about on a podcast or whatever, a glamour division rather, but it's so wide open that you could have a totally new contender emerge. How good are the Twins this year? The White Sox seem on paper good, but I don't know. So maybe it is the case that we get a completely, we always talk about who's going to be the sleeper team this year, but the Indians would be so sleeper that even the biggest egghead would not have predicted that. So I think that is.
Don't we need one every year though, right?
I guess so. And I guess the Rays would have qualified in 08, but I mean, were the Rangers really that team last year? They were very good in 09. I feel like the Indians would be even a bigger surprise than almost any club short of the Rays in the last bunch of years. And I
feel like the Padres were last year's team. It's just they choked in the last weekend. They were kind of designated as that team.
Yeah, I think that's true. And on paper, they just look terrible, except for Adrian Gonzalez and Matt Lato. So maybe that is the case. And we are seeing surprises like that, and that's good. I'll say one thing. Alex Rodriguez is full health. I know that you don't like the Yankees, but he's a fun player to watch when he's
on my fantasy team. I've been watching.
Oh, God.
He crushes it.
He's killing. And you got the park and everything else and the lineup. But, it's listen, I just like when good players play well, and that's great to see. And, even I'll tell you another thing. I think the Cardinals could win that division without Adam Wainwright. I've actually picked the Brewers to go to the World Series this year because I'm that bullish on that team, and I love Gallardo and Greinke. But that NL Central looks so compelling that the Reds should be pretty good. Votto might be the best player in the National League, or at least top 3. And the Brewers have all that hitting, and now they've addressed their pitching. But the Cardinals, even after all that, you got the ancient Lance Berkman. He's still hitting. I love Colby Rasmus. I think he's a real breakout player. And Pujols, and Dave Duncan just generates pitchers year after year. Kyle Loge is the latest guy to be good. There's all these great stories in St. Louis. The Central divisions right now, to me, are almost, more compelling than the rest. I sort of look around and it seems to me the landscape is pretty clear. I think the Red Sox, despite what's happened at the beginning, I think they will win this division and probably by a few games. And I think the Rangers are going to win by a few games. And, I guess the Rockies and Giants could be competitive, although I really do like the Rockies a lot. And although I picked against the Phillies this year, if Utley comes back healthy, they're going to be pretty good. But those Central divisions, I like them. I think there's a lot of drama to be had there. And although I don't know the Indians are necessarily that club, I think the team that comes out of that Reds, Brewers, Cardinals mix may be a sleeper team to win the NL pennant.
Is it fair to say that there's no way in hell we're going to have a 100-win team this year?
I just don't like the Phillies offense that much. I mean, that's the team that jumps out at you, right? But Rollins has just had that one great year offensively, but he's never been great. Utley's knee, who the heck knows? Howard's good, but if you put him against a left-hander in the late innings, it's almost an automatic out. I mean, there's just that's not a great offensive club, and losing Jason Worth hurts too, even though maybe you don't want him for $126 million, but that's a problem. So if that's a team, and the Red Sox, I still think the Red Sox are a great, great ball club, but those losses are in the bank. You know, if you want to win 100 games now, you have to play, I don't know, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I guess 675 ball at least.
Well, when they were 2-10? I blocked it out of my mind. When they were 2-10, we figured it out, and they basically had to play 100 win pace the rest of the way to get to like 95 wins.
Right. So to get to 100, you got to play 105.
But 95 might take it this year.
I think so. Well,
92 might take it.
The Yankees are a flawed ball club. Their rotation is very thin. It's amazing that Bartolo. You want to talk about surprises? How about Bartolo Colon and Freddie Garcia? And these guys are viable major league players. And I think our radar goes up anytime something happens like that. Oh, this guy hasn't been good for 5 years. Oh, he's really good now. That's interesting. But I just take it at face value and take it these guys are good players and how's that going to help the Yankees. But they're still a flawed club, and they do have issues with run prevention. And the Rays, I mean, they can't hit. They have great pitching, great defense. They're about 2 bats short at least. So, sure.
But you know what? I'm a little worried about the Rays because it feels like they should be like 5-20, but they're 11-11. They're kind of they're lurking, they're looming, and they have the B.J. Upton trade to make. They're going to trade B.J. Upton and get 2 guys who play right away. And Desmond Jennings going to come up and he's going to just fit right in. And I'm a little scared of that team.
The whole thing about the extra 2% is on paper. You start off in the off season, and I kind of even poke fun a little bit at a couple writers because every off season say, Red Sox and Yankees, and it's going to be their division. And obviously in 2008 that made sense. That's fine. But then they did it again in 2010. And you say, hey, the Rays just won a division 2 years ago, and they weren't too bad last year. Why are you counting them out? And on paper, you just look at it and you say, okay, they got Longoria and Price and a couple good pieces, but there's no way they're as good as A-Rod and Teixeira and Youkilis and Pedroia and all these great players. And then you sort of look up, wait, how? How is that possible? How is John Jaso their leadoff hitter and they're a good team? How is this even possible? And they just, Sam Fuld, good God. Sam Fuld is like the best baseball story in I don't know how long. Let's review Sam Fuld for a second. Number one, he's about 5'9", 160. Number two, he's from the town that I'm talking to you from, Durham, New Hampshire. I can see his childhood home from my house right now. It's like right down the street. He is diabetic, Jewish, went to Stanford. I've got a Dog and Pony podcast with about one millionth of traffic of yours, and I had him on my podcast in January, and he was a reserve outfielder at the time. Yeah. That is about the most visionary thing I'm ever going to do because he's a social media legend. There's all kinds of great stuff that's going on.
Fantasy legend now, too.
He is. And this is the 5th guy they got in the Matt Garza trade. They get 4 prospects, and they pick up this guy, this 29-year-old Jewish diabetic Stanford outfielder, weighs $160, and he's killing it. And maybe it won't last all year long, but the Rays do that all the time. That's extra 2% stuff all the time. I don't know how they do it, but they do. Well, I guess I know some of how they do it, but they just keep doing it.
Yeah, but you look at that guy's, because we were going to bid on him in our AL Keeper League.
Yeah.
And really all he had going minor league, if you're like, how is this going to project this? He did get on base. But even his steals, like he got caught stealing all the time. He never hit for average ever. It just seemed like, all right, this guy just had a good week. It's going to fade away. But now it's like, I don't know what's going on. Now this has become a force of nature that I don't know how we even harness it.
I think one of the best parts is that Manny Ramirez was supposed to have a bobblehead day on May 29th. They canceled it, and now they have a Super Sam Fuld Cape Day for the kids. Talk about, there's so much kismet in that you have Manny Ramirez. And listen, I'm like you. I know that you like Manny, and I feel a little bit bad that it turned out that way, even though obviously it was pretty jerky what happened. But they wash away all these bad feelings with this kid, with Sam Fuld kid. He's 29.
That's what worries me, though, is because you have Longoria goes out immediately. Manny, it's a disaster.
Yep.
B.J. Upton's not hitting at all. Zobrist finally crashed to earth and left a giant crater.
Nothing at first base at all.
And they're 11-11.
Yep.
And they don't really have a closer. Like the Farnsworth thing somehow hasn't imploded yet. But I worry that if they make the B.J. Upton trade that they're going to make, and then they become just a scrappy team, and it's like they had Manny and they got rid of him, and they had B.J. Upton, and nobody expected this. And how is this team 2 out of first on September 1st? That's what I'm worried about. And then they're doing the whole nobody believed in us in this clubhouse, but the guys in this clubhouse, and then Buster writing the whole thing about the Rays doing it with starting pitching, and this is. I'm worried about all this stuff. I've been planning it out because the Yankees, they got 1.5 pitchers, plus Rivera, and I don't think 95 wins is going to take it this year. I think it's going to be in the 92 to 93 range.
Yeah, a couple of things on that. First of all, Farnsworth, and I know that it's crazy to say this because he has a horrible reputation. Anybody in New York thinks he stinks. Yeah. He totally changed his repertoire, and one of the cool things that I like about the stats revolution is you can now go and see, oh, yeah, this guy now throws a cutter 27% of the time, and he never did that before. That was all anecdotal. You had to get anonymous pitching coach X to tell you that. He's actually changed the way he pitches, and he's much better now. He was good the last 2 years. So, listen, he's not Rivera, but he's actually capable. I think that he's fine.
So you think that's his job the whole year?
Yeah, I picked him up in the reserve round of my 16-team mixed, and I have not looked back. I feel good about it. And, Madden likes to talk about the closer by committee and stuff like that, and Joe Madden, God knows, is the most almost over-managing manager, although it seems to work for him, so I shouldn't say that, in the league. But even he, closer by committee, presents issues. Farnsworth is going to be the guy most of the time. If J.P. Howell comes back healthy, he's a good enough left-hander that if you have this Poppy, Drew, Ellsbury kind of scenario in the ninth inning, then maybe occasionally they go to Howell. But other than that,
do I get an epilogue in the extra 2% paperback for the fact that I have Masterson and Josh Tomlin on my AL keeper team?
That's pretty good.
Thank you.
That is, although I'm not so sold on Tomlin. Masterson, by the way, is an interesting guy. He throws almost sidearm as a starter. He's like the only guy in baseball to do that. But that should be a problem against left-handers. I think that could catch up to him. But anytime he faces a team against tough righties, if he's ever on like the ESPN Game of the Week and you got Boog Sciambi or Sean McDonough or Dan Shulman or whoever on the call and they're all good, and they're playing a team that's really loaded with right-handers, just drop what you're doing and go watch that game. There's actually no hitter possibility. And you can mark this on the podcast, by the way, because if it happens in July, then I told you so. Because against right-handers, he's almost unhittable. It's just lefties that can give him problems.
And I left out Matt Harrison, who we also have. That's pretty good.
Are you in first?
No.
Your hitting's not good.
Also have Zach Britton and Michael Pineda.
You need to make some trade. You need to trade some pitching for some hitting.
I had the John Lackey, Francisco Liriano just murdered us, and we needed our rookies to come up because we have Ackley and Chisenhall and Hosmer and Jennings, and none of these guys are being brought up because the stupid April 22nd thing that I hate.
They're going to change the
dumbest rule in sports.
Yeah, you're gonna see that service time change. I think when you get to the next collective bargaining agreement, things are going to be a little bit different because teams are all winking at us, but we know, and it's just a ripoff to the fans that we don't get to see these great young players. I think there won't be major changes in the CBA, much healthier than the NBA or the NFL going forward. But if there's one thing that could change, it's that, and maybe even draft pick compensation, how all that works, and all that affects, by the way, teams like the Rays quite a bit. Now you're changing those kinds of rules, which were specifically loopholes that those teams would take advantage of. They're going to have to find other ways. They will, but they'll have to change it up a little bit.
What rule do you think is definitely going away that they were taking advantage of the most?
I think it might be the service time thing and how they do arbitration eligibility and things like that. But I don't think there's going to be major changes. That's the thing about the CBA. We're not hearing a lot of noise. And that's to the good for baseball. You don't want to have these seismic things where teams can't compete and all that. And another thing which we talked about offline was this whole thing about Sacramento. And, I mean, the revenue sharing is just not the same thing in the NBA as it is in baseball. I know that baseball gets a lot of flack because the Yankees have a $220 million payroll and the Rays are going to 40. But we're talking about the Rays as a viable contender, and we're talking about Cincinnati and Texas last year as viable contenders, and we're not talking about Sacramento. And there's something to be said for that. And, basketball, all the owners are in it for themselves. But it has to be a socialistic enterprise. It just has to. You cannot have a healthy league where 2 or 3 clubs are competitive or even 5 clubs are competitive. It can't work that way. And baseball has that reputation, but there have been more different World Series winners in baseball or different championship winners in baseball than any other sport in the last 25, 30 years. There is parity in baseball. It just doesn't seem that way because the Yankees and the Red Sox are always in the playoffs. But at the end of it, things do change. So I think that they're pretty good where they are. And maybe it's not America's sport, it's the NFL, and all the NBA is eclipsed in popularity. I don't know. Owners are making money. Fans are still going to the games. They're watching on their 60-inch HD TVs. Seems pretty good to me. Maybe I'm just an optimist, but it seems like baseball's in pretty good shape right now.
Last question. Is there a baseball stat that this year has come out, a new one or a newer one, that you're excited about?
Newer one this year that's come out. Oh, you know what I like, actually? I'll give a hat tip. I write for Fangraphs sometimes, and there's a great stat called shutdowns and meltdowns. This is a very, very simple stat, and it's one that I think you'll glom onto. Very, very simple. Normally we talk about relief pitchers in terms of saves and holds. Too simple. Saves is basically preordained. You're up by 3 runs, you bring the guy in, and holds is kind of the precursor to that. Shutdowns and meltdowns literally means, did you help your team or did you hurt your team when you came in the game? That is it. It's based on run expectancy and all these complicated formulas, irrelevant what the formulas are. You get a +1 if you had a shutdown, and you get a -1 if you had a meltdown. And the sniff test for this rule is that someone like Rivera is going to be either the best or second best or third best in all baseball. But the beauty of it is you're going to find these hidden gems. I remember you and I talked about Brett Anderson back in the day, and now it looks like he's emerging as this really elite pitcher, and you saw it in FIP and all this other stuff. This is sort of it. The ERA leaders are going to be a pretty good indicator every year, but you want something that gives you just that little bit more, and this is what shutdowns and meltdowns do. And you're going to find stuff like Arthur Rhodes has been amazing the last 3 or 4 years, even though he doesn't get paid much and he's not a closer. So if you're looking at that, that's good. You know who else has been very good at that, actually? Daniel Bard. Daniel Bard doesn't have many saves because he got Papelbon, who's not as good. But when Daniel Bard comes in the game, good things happen to the Red Sox. Shutdowns and meltdowns are great if you want to evaluate bullpen talent, which, by the way, is about the most volatile commodity in all of sports. There are like 2, maybe 1 reliable relief pitcher in all of baseball, and that's Mariano Rivera. Everybody else, why are you spending money? The Yankees spent $35 million for Rafael Soriano. Not so smart. That's not a good idea. Go look at shutdowns and meltdowns. Go get yourself a guy who makes $2 million. You'll be fine.
And the thing with the Soriano is that was their big free agent move.
Well, they wanted Cliff Lee, and then they had all this money burning a hole in their pocket. Great story about Randy Levine that came out recently. It's in the new Ian O'Connor book about Jeter and the Yankees, that he goes over to meet with Jeter, and Jeter basically convinces them to give him an extra $5 million. The Yankees have this weird bimodal management team where part of it is in Tampa and part of it is in New York. And Brian,
I love it.
Yeah, and he's getting overruled, and Cashman's like, this is terrible, and he's starting to, this offseason he was acting like someone who wanted out of there because he's the smart guy, and he's getting overruled by people who are just not as good at baseball evaluation. He hated the Soriano move, and he just got overruled flat out.
Have we figured out a stat yet to account for somebody like Johnny Damon, who you could just pencil in your lineup every day? There's got to be something to reflect. This guy is going, it's just durable. I guess we have the durability stat would be games played. But shouldn't that matter more than it does when we have like the fact that J.D. Drew is going to look better statistically than Johnny Damon does, but he plays 25 less games?
Well, J.D. Drew's not going to wins above replacement is still a counting stat, and it's how good you are and how durable you are. So that does matter, and that does.
Oh, so they factor that in on WAR.
Yeah, because it's just total goodness. It's if you play 50 games, no matter how good you are, you're not going to be an 8 or a 9 win player. It's just impossible. But if you play all season like that, you can be. So yeah, that's in the mix. But Damon's got some pixie dust going on. When the Rays came out of the cellar, he drove in the winning run 5 wins in a row. And like 2 of them were, like one of them was a walk-off homer, one was a walk-off single. I mean, it was like Johnny Damon week. And it's so funny.
I love Johnny Damon.
Yeah, and everybody in Tampa Bay loves him. And it's so funny because apparently the gist was that Scott Boras had set it up as a package deal. He went to Friedman, and it was late in the signing period, and the Rays are sneaky that way. They're like poker players, and they sit and wait you out. And Boras goes to him and says, yeah, we'll give you Manny Ramirez for $2 million, but you got to take Johnny Damon for 5 and maybe 6 with attendance bonuses. And I think that almost any stat head would have said, oh, my God, Manny Ramirez at $2 million. If this guy's healthy, he's going to hit like crazy. And Johnny Damon, he doesn't feel that well anymore. He's not a power hitter. But okay, we'll take him as part of a package deal. Damon, by advanced stats, actually hasn't been that good this year because he started slowly. But he's won all these games for them. I mean, game-winning RBI are sort of a silly stat, but he had that one week where he just went crazy, and that counts. That's all to the good. And I don't know, whatever intangible stuff you want to talk about, everybody on the team likes him. He's the new Carlos Pena. He's the guy who smiles, and everybody likes him, and they look up to him. And yeah, that he's played over 140 games every year of his career after his rookie season? Yeah, Andy Pettitte had that too. Andy Pettitte was never the best pitcher in the league. Yeah. How many starts did Andy Pettitte miss? Derek Lowe's like that now. Buster and I talked about that last week. Derek Lowe is the 200 innings every year. Pencil him in, 33 starts. And he had a couple years ago, he kind of fell off, and he's on the edge, right, because he's a ground ball guy who doesn't strike out a lot of batters. But he got some more walks, and then you said, it might be the end of Derek Lowe. I don't know. To get this healthy sinker baller, it's not quite Wakefield-esque in the durability, but there is something to it. He's not throwing at max effort. He's just, he's throwing these worm burners. He's still at about 60% ground balls or close to it. And there's a lot to be said for that. And that's another scary team that's off to a slow start, by the way, is the Braves, because they've built that pitching, and Lowe is one of those guys, absolutely.
Johnny D is only now 410 hits away from 3,000.
Yeah, I think things have changed, though. I wouldn't. If he gets it, I wouldn't. I don't think he would be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, maybe other people will think that way, and there's a lot of, again, pixie dust that goes around Johnny Damon, but, was he a better player over the course of his career than Bobby Abreu?
I'm just pointing out he's going to have 3,000 hits.
I know, but I mean, that's the next step. Whenever you mention a round number, as the station in life that I have, I'm required to weigh in and say, does that mean that he's a Hall of Famer?
He'd have over 400 steals.
Yep.
At like an 80% steal rate. That's pretty good, right?
That's very good. Yeah, anything over 70 is pretty good, and then you get 75 plus, that's quite good, and over 80. Reigns is like the best base stealer of all time. He was just under 84.
200 plus homers.
Yep.
He'll probably settle at like 240, somewhere in there.
Yep.
2004 playoffs.
Yep.
Counts for a little something, maybe.
Absolutely. Was he going to hit 285, 290 for his career? I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah. 287 career hitter, 355 on base, 436 slugging. Yeah.
He's a nice player. Listen, I love the guy, and he's a lot of fun. And yeah, you mentioned the Rays and that underdog mentality, and there's just...
Oh, 09. We forgot 09. He's got 2 rings.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of good mojo around the guy. What if he wins another ring with the Rays this year? That would be his best performance.
Stop it. Settle down.
Hey, you're the one that brought it up.
It is going to be interesting, though. This Hall of Fame is just shot to hell. It's almost like not even worth having the conversation anymore.
Well, and
it's like arguing religion with people. Like everybody's just going to believe in a different whatever, and there's no way to reconcile all the opinions.
Or politics. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't get it. I think that people aren't taking enough of a step back as voters. Let's say that you really, really are just against everything that Bonds and Clemens and Manning and all these guys stand for. Can you not close your eyes and picture a Hall of Fame where nobody gets in for a whole bunch of years? I mean, it's just, you can't do that. That's a very cute town. I don't know if you've been to the Hall of Fame, if you've been to Cooperstown. It's a great place. The place is going to shut down if there's no Hall of Fame. I mean, they still have the museum, but they won't have the ceremonies every year and the plaques, and things will change.
I've been writing about this for 5 years. I just think, put it on the plaque. Nobody's been able to come up with a good counter to that one. Hey, you make the Hall of Fame, but it's on your plaque that you're a cheater.
Yeah, that's fine. Well,
the whole point of the Hall of Fame is
with Gaylord Perry. You have to go back and retroactively do it with some other guys too. But yeah,
do it with Ty Cobb. Talk about how I fixed the game. Like, just go back, change the plaques.
Ty Cobb, a horrible racist, also had 4,000 hits.
Right.
Yeah.
Also hit 400 like 3 times in his career. Yeah, I just think I always thought the Baseball Hall of Fame was a place that I could take my son someday, and he would learn about baseball. If we just walked around for 5 straight days, he would learn everything he needs to know about baseball. I thought that was the point of the Hall of Fame.
I went to the Gwynn Ripken Hall of Fame induction ceremony a few years ago. I wrote about it for ESPN.com. I almost feel like I could retroactively go back and turn that into an Esquire piece about the last induction. That's the last time people felt universally good about these 2 guys. And we don't even know about who the heck knows with Gwynn Ripken or anybody. But for now, the same team, no negative pub around either of these guys. Everybody loves them. Great players. There were like 90,000 people there. About 80,000 were Orioles fans, by the way, because they all drove. But there were so many good vibes that day. That could be the last time in I don't know how long, maybe ever, that you're going to see something like that in the Hall of Fame. And I guess I didn't realize it at the time, but that was just this seminal moment in baseball history that it's just maybe everything is going to be clouded for the next generation, 2 generations. Who knows?
Well, why are we so sure that it's over?
We're not. Not only we're not sure that it's over, how can we be 100% sure that the other guys in that era who haven't been busted are clean? And I'm not even just talking about the guys who weigh 240 pounds and hit a bunch of homers. Why is it that 170-pound, soft tosser, but a guy who never got hurt and never had any problems and was just always in the lineup and always energetic or whatever, maybe he was using something too. And I I'm not saying this to cast aspersions on everybody in the sense that I feel suspicious or negative or whatever. I actually don't have a problem with it, and I think that if you're an athlete, you're just going to go for whatever you're going to go for. I'm just very matter-of-fact about it. And by the way, we're talking about baseball, and I know you've touched on it in terms of the NBA. I mean, it's hard to play in the NBA. It's hard to be healthy and productive and put up 30 a night or even 20 a night and whatever. And whatever substance you might be using, I don't understand why you wouldn't use it. I just think there's always a way around something. There's always the next cutting-edge technology to get away from it.
I always wondered about blood doping with NBA.
That's a good one.
If you could put extra oxygen in your body to have more endurance in the fourth quarter of a game, and there's no rule against doing it, then why wouldn't you do it?
How about beta blockers? How about you're in the fourth quarter and the whole game is riding on you and you have to make free throws, or you have to have a steady hand on the jumper and not be influenced by the circumstances, and you just have something that just puts you have the Zen level.
Right.
You know? Or maybe you just smoke up before the fourth quarter and you're feeling all good about everything. I don't know.
Quick toot. All right, Jonah Keri, your book, The Extra 2%, available on Amazon.com, bookstores everywhere. Thanks as always. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at PodCenter at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.